It's not often we get other attorneys. We've had a couple on before, and I love bringing them on for a few reasons. One, their brains work a little differently than all of ours, but two, they always bring in some insight that we can always use. Furthermore, Amber Fuhriman, also podcast author, all those fun things that we're going to dive into, but ultimately also a business owner, right? And that's what we're all here for. So without further ado, Amber, why don't you talk to us a little bit about your background and what your day-to-day life.
Thanks so much for having me on. I'm so excited to be here. And I think this is the first time that I've ever heard somebody talk about the way an attorney's brain works differently in a positive note, because normally we're just getting yelled at. I'm so happy to be here. As far as my background, is that what you asked? I'm so sorry.
Yeah, yeah,
Apparently
you're good.
attorney brains don't listen.
No,
Okay,
yeah,
cool.
your background.
So my background, I have been a criminal defense and immigration attorney for about 14 years, if you count all the internships and free work I did as a law school student. I grew up in Idaho, went to school in Michigan, thought I was going to end up in Boston until I realized that I still had, I think we've all, as business owners and attorneys, gone through our bleeding heart stage where the cause is more important than the money that we're going to get from it. And so much so that we don't think money matters. And so I wanted to be a public defender for a while. And for anybody who doesn't know, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of cases. It's a very thankless profession, and it's very low paid. And I was going to do that in Boston until I realized that their public defender's office started at 50 grand. And you can't buy a cardboard box in Boston for 50 grand. I ended up in Vegas, went through an internship at the public defender's office, and was super excited to get a job there because in law school, being a public defender was framed as this job that nobody wants, and they're just begging people to do it. But that's not the case in Vegas. Vegas has one of the most competitive public defender's offices in the nation. They're well paid, they're well funded, they've got a good, and so it takes 3 or 4 application cycles to get in. Nobody explained this to me. As a high achieving person who got into law school, was good in interviews, being told no isn't something I was used to. So when I didn't get the job, I was devastated. First of all, I didn't understand. I had never not gotten a job ever in my life. And then second, like, who the hell says no to somebody who wants to be a public defender? I was so confused. And I ended up needing to find a job and found immigration law. I did this for, I'm going on 14 years. I did it full time for about 4 years, 5 years, until I hit what I call my I'll be happy moment. And let me explain that for just a little bit. I had, like most people do, this misconception that if I worked hard, if I did everything that I was supposed to do, if I reached professional heights that paid me well and gave me a lot of respect in my industry, that everything I didn't like about myself, my background, my trauma I had been through, that was all going to somehow become less important in my life. And to me, that moment where everything was supposed to become magically better was a 6-figure income and a law degree. And hitting that was the best and worst thing that ever happened to me, because I hit it and then I waited. And how was it that I had my 6-figure income, my law degree, my respect in my profession? I was living in a city like Vegas that's so exciting, and I have everything that my small town Idaho heart wanted, and it still hurt, and the pain's still there. And that's when my panic attacks started. So everything that I have gained in the coaching world, in the training world, in the human behavior and communication world that I have now has come because I got everything that I wanted, and it did nothing for me, and I crashed.
That is such an important part of our lives as humans, one. But two, when you're on your wealth journey and just in life, everything we've been taught, in my opinion, when we're kids, you go to school, college, get a good degree, get a job, have a home, kids, blah, 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 happy life. The older I get, I don't know if it's just because we're getting older or times are changing where people are recognizing that just because you do that success, if you will, doesn't negate all the trauma and things that you went through to even get there. And if we don't focus on yourself and who you are, then all of that is irrelevant. And that really comes down, and we see it a lot when people are dealing with their money and their finances and whatnot, is like, you can see all of that rooted in there because they're not getting ahead, because they're spending money on things that are from their childhood of things. And so I just love the fact that you have noticed that. Don't love the fact you had to go through a panic attack to get there, but I am glad that you've gone through it. You're on the other side of it, and we're able to now teach other ones and teach everyone. Who do we got there? Who's that?
Yeah. So I was going to say, if you guys are on video, apparently this is Jasmine's show now.
Nah,
This is
yeah,
my
love
German
it.
Shepherd, Jasmine, and she has decided that now is attention time, regardless of what I've decided. Go get it. I 100% agree with what you said. And I think that there's so much that we could unpack there related to money mindset and trauma, which is where I feel now. I have business owners that come to me and they say, I want to make more money. And my first response is, what was your relationship like with money as a kid? What were the conversations like with money as a kid? And in fact, I was doing a call with somebody recently and I told them the cost of coming through a training with me. And he says, money decisions just make me a little bit uncomfortable. And I said, I can appreciate that because they make a lot of people uncomfortable. However, you sell services. And if money conversations make you uncomfortable, then what is it that you think is coming out of your mouth when you try to ask somebody for money? Uncomfortableness. And it was interesting because one of the things we were talking about was the fact that he wasn't a closer, that people would connect with him. They would say how great it was. They would say how great of a person he was, how much they loved being around him. When it came to the actual exchange of money, nothing would happen. And I said, it's shocking to me that's what's going on, since money and conversations make you uncomfortable. Like, it's not just an internal thing, right? The other side of what you said, though, the crash was necessary. I am sad that I had to go through the pain too. But frankly, without it, I never would have changed, because pain was something that was it was no stranger to me. It started losing people in my life at the age of 7. That's the first time that I consciously remember somebody in my life dying. Now, I know now from conversations that I've had with family members that there have been traumatic experiences that I don't consciously remember that happened before that I know shape the way that I show up in situations. Consciously, though, the age of 7 is the first time I remember somebody leaving my life, and it was my cousin that committed suicide. At the age of 14, my uncle committed suicide. At the age of 18, I lost my dad in a work-related accident. I went to 10 funerals between the ages of 7 and 18. That pain, I figured how to mask with professional accomplishment. And I call myself a recovering attorney in the coaching space. And people will ask me, how can you call yourself recovering if you're still licensed and you still go to court and you still get clients? And my response has always been, being a recovering attorney doesn't mean that you don't practice law anymore. It means that you don't need the hit of walking into a courtroom to feel valued and respected. And one of the favorite podcast conversations I've ever had was on my show about 3 years ago. And a friend of mine is a recovering drug addict. And if you take away our identities, you take away our gender, you take away who we are, and you just look at the important parts of our story, we both have a history of suicide in our family. We both lost people at a young age. We both lost our dad at a young age. We both had these abandonment conversations. My drug was professional and educational success. His drug was drug. But everybody looks at him and says how screwed up he is. And everybody looks at me and says how successful I am. Just because my choice of drug was more societally acceptable doesn't mean that my choices were healthier or.
I think you nailed it with that. And this is really funny. Might not be the right term, but I'm going to use it. I'm going to run with it because my brain ain't working. Last night at kids' soccer practice, one of the dads was talking to my wife, who does physical therapy, and was talking about his wife, who was a runner and does CrossFit, etc., for probably her IT band or something. Okay. Now, before I get into what that conversation was about, he is the substance abuse counselor was a prison. It was in the female prison side of things. Now it's a profit, basically the same thing, just now in a nonprofit set. And we were talking about some rehab things she could do and all those things. And husband was like, I told her it's an overuse issue, right? And she's not having that. And then he said, and we were all talking about, I was like, her substance abuse is working out. He said she has to work out 6 days a week to even be able to do anything. She has to have the gym in the morning to even deal with the stress of the day. That is substance abuse. That whatever your drug of choice may be, we all have it. And what a lot of people don't understand is whatever of drug of choice is yours, substance out, doesn't matter. Are you letting it run your life, or do you recognize it or not?
Yeah.
Some people let it run their life and it ruins their life. Some people do the hyperdrive of the other way around and it still ruins their life. And I believe it's very important, specifically for business owners and you being a business owner, to understand it, recognize it. And yeah, you're still going to go through it. It's never going to go away. But if you can recognize it now, you can actually start to use it as a tool and in an effective manner as opposed to a destructive manner. So it was really funny you brought that up because that literally happened last night in that conversation. And again, funny. I'm using the word fun.
And we do and train the things that we need the most. So as business owners, and I think this is incredibly important for anybody who's thinking about starting a business because they think they got to have it all together in order to get it started. And people always ask me before you opened your first business, which was my law firm in 2017, what do you wish you knew? And my answer is that nobody knows what the hell they're doing. Like, nobody knows what they're doing when they start. And if I could go back and start now with all the knowledge that I have now, I'd just make different mistakes because there are things that I don't know. Nobody gets out of business ownership without making mistakes. They're just bigger mistakes, the more knowledge that you have, and you recover from them faster because you don't get stuck in that bullshit ideology that you're the only one that makes them, right? When we're talking about starting something, oftentimes that imposter syndrome kicks in and we're like, I haven't done it, or I'm still struggling with this, or who am I to teach this? And I love the idea and the perspective that when you are struggling with something and you have made it out of that a little bit, you are the best positioned person to help somebody who's stuck in it. Think about me as a business coach, and I'm going to throw out a big name. There's zero association, so take it or leave it. Like a Tony Robbins is a business coach, right? Somebody who's just starting their business might look at a high-level business coach that charges, and I don't know how much he charges. I'm going to throw out $150,000 a year, probably a lot more than that, and looks at him and says, first of all, I don't resonate with anything that you're saying to me. I don't know how to get from where I am now to where you think that I should be to start. I don't think you understand my problems because look at you. When they can look at somebody that's been in business for 5, 10, 15 years and say, I remember what it's like to start something and feel so terrified that it feels like my physical safety is actually in danger to go out and do something. They have sociological and neurological resources in how I respond to that than somebody that's been outside of that for so long might not have. So it brings a different perspective and both are necessary.
Absolutely. I say this a lot, probably too much, but as business owners, being a business owner sucks. But it's one of the most joyful and fulfilling things you can do as well, right? Talk us through like starting your businesses and the shitty parts. Talk to us about the shitty parts of being a business owner. And I bring that up because I want to enlighten everyone and laugh about it because we all go through it. You said it best. No one has their shit together. Not a person in this world does, specifically when they're starting a business. So can you talk us through kind of some of the shitty things you started with and learn?
Yeah. So first of all, I'm going to say the way I started my business is not the way I would suggest anybody start their business. So let's just go there. It worked out well for me.
Love it.
I'm single. I don't have any kids. I never wanted any kids. I can take liberties with security that people who have a family to support might not be able to take. I opened my first business because I was at my wit's end. I was tired of being an attorney. It wasn't bringing me what I wanted. I went to law school thinking that there was going to be this time that I was going to be able to live my life. And being an attorney isn't the most flexible career that exists, especially when you're in a heavy litigation field. At this point in time, 15 to 2017, I was working as the only female criminal defense attorney for the biggest private criminal defense firm in Las Vegas. I handled all of their high-level sexual assault cases. I handled all of their high-level, and this sucks to say, and it's 100% perception. I need a woman at the defense table with me to show people that the guy that's sitting there can't be that scary because you're willing to sit with them. I handled all of those, right? And I was burnt out. So I had gone from that person in law school that read John Grisham books and watched Perry Mason and thought that's what law school is going to be like, to being in the trenches of what a jury trial is actually like and going home every single day of a 2-week jury trial thinking that I had ran a marathon every single day for 14 days straight. And on top of that, now I have panic attacks and I have anxiety attacks and I have everything that I wanted in my life and nothing has changed. What the hell did I do wrong? And that's really where I was at. So I started thinking, I'm going to hit the reset button. And I know that you guys have felt this way. I worked so hard to get here. It didn't pay off. I must have done something wrong along the way. So I'm going to reset. I'm going to go back to the starting point. I'm going to make things differently. Have you guys seen the movie Groundhog Day? You cannot make different choices with the same mindset that you created the current choices that you have. So when you blow up your life, your relationship, your business, your whatever it is, because you're not happy with the way it turned out and you start over, you create the exact same scenario. It just has different wallpaper. It just has a different name and a different title. And I am so thankful that something happened to pattern interrupt where I was at without knowing that's what was happening. So a friend of mine plays poker. He says, I met this guy at a poker table and I told him you were an attorney and he says he doesn't know any immigration attorneys. And so he wants to talk to you. So I thought, cool, I'll give him a call. And it was an out of body experience where I'm talking to this person and there's things coming out of my mouth that I know I'm not saying because they terrified me. And as we're talking about business, I said, I don't know what I want to do. I don't want to be in this environment anymore. And he goes, I don't have room for an associate in my office right now. And I said, for the first time in my life, that's okay because I never want to work for anybody ever again. And I was like, no, take it back, put it back in, take it back, take it back. Like, what do you mean you never want to work for anybody again? If you don't work for anybody, what the hell are you going to do? How are you going to pay your bills? How are you going to make money? And he says, I got office space. And I said, I don't know anything about running a business. And he said, can you be here in an hour? And so I went up and for 2 hours on a Friday afternoon, this guy who owed me nothing walked me through everything from business licensing to insurance to CRMs, introduced me to who he needed, found myself in a very safe, conducive environment for opening a business. And then I looked at him and said, I appreciate your time, but I don't want to be an attorney anymore. And he goes, I don't think that it's being an attorney that you don't like. I think it's working for other people and being forced to do things that you don't enjoy doing and not having control over your life that you don't like. And I said, I don't think that's it. Because I was raised by two people that were at complete different ends of the spectrum. My mom, who is so risk averse that she thinks that success is working for the government, getting your 401k, retiring at 65. And my dad, who owned his own business and every single week was a different way that he was going to make $1 million and none of them worked out. And I remember saying to my mom about 3 years ago after I'd had my business for a while, that I was so surprised that I opened my business without any entrepreneurial influences. And I thought she was going to crash her car. She goes, what do you mean no entrepreneurial influences? I did everything that I could to keep you from floating away with your dad and your grandma and realized that you needed structure and a 1K in order to be successful. So I just think it's funny what sticks in our head. So I'm hearing my mom going, don't open your own business. Don't do it. Don't do it. And this guy says, what are you going to do? I said, I'm going to go back to bartending and figure out what I did wrong. And I'm going to make a new plan. And he goes, cool. What's the difference between going back to bartending now or going back to bartending in 6 months if you decide that owning a business isn't what you want? And he said, then how much are you going to regret blowing this up and then not knowing whether this is what you wanted? You've got office space. So I rented a room in his business and hung up my shingle, started my firm on October 2nd of 2017. For those of you who think that date sounds familiar, there was a huge event, October 1st of 2017 in Las Vegas. So I was emotionally unstable. I was supposed to be at that event and I sold my ticket to hang out with my cousin. I'm very deep in the country music and dancing community here. And I had friends missing. I still had no idea where people were at. Focusing was incredibly difficult. And having my business to open and something to focus on is part of what grounded me. So opening my business, I learned a very quick lesson. Field of Dreams lied to me. If you build it, they will not come.
I'm in Iowa, by the way. So that is freaking hilarious. And also that you're from Idaho and everyone thinks Iowa and Idaho are the same. Sorry,
Yes,
I diverged, but that is a fantastic quote.
In college, my first degree was computer programming and we were Idaho State. And so we went to this massive conference in Chicago and this competition and it's ISU. And they kept calling us Iowa State. And we were like, Idaho.
It's not the
Potatoes, not corn. Anyways, I'm sitting in my office, and this is a really important note for anybody who's listening. Your language matters. And I wish that I had known how much my language mattered then as much as I do now that I train and teach language and communication and NLP. So in my head, I thought, I'm so happy. My favorite thing about opening my business is that nobody's going to tell me what to do. Who's included in nobody? This person. And I didn't tell myself what to do for a long time. I opened my business with $2,000 in my bank account. I remember calling an Asian friend of mine, and that's important. Okay. The clarification is important. I realized when I said it, I was like, oh God, that's going to come off bad if somebody's listening to it. I called him. He's a CPA. He's Asian. He's in California. And I said, I'm willing to do this and eat ramen if I need to. And he goes, I know some great ramen places. And I said, no, I'm talking 25 cents a package from Kroger, not like, and so I remember when I got my first $10,000 cash retainer, and he was my first call. And I said, I need those good ramen prices now. I can afford the good ramen now. Can
good
you give me
ramen.
those
Yeah.
suggestions? So I opened my business with no money. I had shitty credit. I had to build my business on cash. I built a $300,000 law firm in 2 years with no credit, no cash, by sweat equity. And there's another side to this that's incredibly important. And that is that I had really good people around me. I had people who would come into my office and say, I know that you're just starting. I have contract work. If you need it, don't be too proud to ask for it. I had people call me that said, I could handle half of this case and you could handle the other, but I know you need it more than I do. So I've got a guy with $15,000 coming to your office. I need it. I had people that were in my corner. You cannot do it alone. Even if you are a solo person, you cannot do it alone.
That that is such a huge point. Like
Yeah.
you need a team, and it does take a village. There's no self-made anybody. There is a team. So I
And you
started
have to be
interrupting, but that
willing
is
to
huge.
say you need it, right? You cannot expect people to know that you need help if the image that you're putting out is that you have everything under control.
Sure.
So when I opened my business, I learned very quickly that I had always worked at those magic law firms where the supply closet filled itself up all by itself and the postage meter ran all by itself and the letters got stamped all by itself. And that's when I realized I was in trouble. When I went to mail a letter for the first time, the first week I was open, and I didn't have stamps and I didn't have envelope and I didn't know how to get them. And I jokingly say law school made me dumb. I can write the longest briefs, the most complicated briefs. I can argue against the most in-depth sentences. Booking a plane ticket, I almost free. So I had to come back to the simple stuff. So if I was to wrap this up with starting my business and the shitty parts of it, it was not understanding the loneliness that comes along with being a solo practitioner. Not understanding that. So first of all, part of the reason that I was willing to step out and open my business was because the place that I was working, in order to make sure that I don't say something that could get me in trouble later, I am going to say I always got paid. There were moments, though, that I questioned whether I was going to. And that really challenged that sense of security that most people think they have in a 9 to 5. So what keeps people working for somebody else is the belief that they're more secure working for somebody else than they are working for themselves. And that got taken away from me. And then I felt myself spiraling because if I'm going to be worried about where my next paycheck's going to come from, I want to have control over knowing that I'm doing what I need to do in order to make sure that happens. And so I got pushed out into my uncomfortable zone because it was either work for somebody else and not know whether you're going to get paid, or work for yourself and not know whether you're going to get paid. And I chose myself. And with that came this incredible sense of insecurity that I wasn't used to. The need, and I'm glad that I had the obstacle course racing experience that I had up to that point, because being uncomfortable was something I had gotten really used to for the 2 years before that. And I handled it in a way I would differently. You're going to be lonely. Success is lonely. The higher you get on the success ladder, and I hate referring it to that because I don't feel like I'm above anybody else. So let's go, the further along you get on the success journey,
Yep.
the more people drop off. And you find your community in like-minded people who understand how lonely it can be to be successful. Leadership is a lonely journey. being the person, if you do leadership well, your faults are your responsibility, your failures are your responsibility, and your successes are someone else. And that is such a lonely place.
It is. And being married with kids, it's still lonely
Yes.
because no matter where you're at, like it's still in your hands always.
Is your
Yeah.
wife a business owner or?
No, she works for someone else, physical therapy, although she's working on hopefully coming on board and working in the business, but still like that, she's not that mindset.
Yeah.
Entrepreneur mindset is not hers, but we're teaching her it. But regardless, like you still have the loneliness. Doesn't matter who's around you, what's going on. It's just fundamental in business ownership. Now, is there lesser? Can you work on it? Absolutely. But it doesn't matter. When you're successful or not, you're going to have some of that. And I think the important part of what people need to understand is that is normal. That is okay. It's when you freeze, don't move, and can't get out of your own way is when you fail.
Yeah.
And I don't mean fail as in like I did something wrong and I'm going to learn from it. When you completely, it's over, you did something big,
Yeah.
you got to wrap up shop. You freeze and don't move and don't have a team of like-minded people. That's when business is going.
Yeah. And this goes back also to part of the crash that led to my panic attacks and anxiety attacks, because I was looking for something outside of myself to make me feel like I was in. And when you get to that place where you're lonely, you have to be able to know that you got it. You have to be able to know that no matter what happens with your business, it's a really sad statistic. But what is one of the number one reasons for suicide? It's financial failure. People are so ashamed to say that their business has failed or that their finances have failed that they can't find a way out of that. That is incredibly sad and dangerous. But we, as a society, tie our self-worth to our network. We tie our self-worth to what we've accomplished in a professional environment. And I thought that I had this figured out until I published. My book was published last year, and I thought I was publishing it because I had the answers. I didn't realize how many more answers I was going to get by writing what I thought I had already learned. And one of the things that came out of the book was my conversation about my relationship with my mom and the fact that she had always been the person that never believed in me. Hear this victim mentality so much. And I wish I could call it something than that. This underdog mentality, that's all it is, a victim mentality. And I wish it wasn't. The show me that I can't do it and I'm going to do it anyways. What happens when you reach a level of success where nobody's rooting against you? What's your motivation then to be successful? And I had gone from, my mom hates me. She doesn't believe in me. She doesn't think that I can do it. And so I'm going to do it to prove her wrong because screw her. That's my mom's journey. I understand she was doing the best that she could. What writing the book did was take me to the place of actual admiration for her, because I finally had to take ownership for the places where I contributed to that relationship. And I wrote a statement, I think it's in the book, or it might have been in a podcast episode after the book, that my mom was the villain that I needed to remain a victim. And we all have it when we don't want to deal with our shit. When I look at my relationship with my mom and I say she didn't love me enough, she didn't believe in me enough, all that tells me is that I didn't believe in myself enough, and I was trying to get her to believe in me enough that my lack of belief in me didn't matter. Because if I believed in me, if I loved me, if I thought I could do it, then it wouldn't have mattered what anybody else thought about me. And that is what's missing in relationships, in business, in money, in every single part of our life. We feel incomplete. And we think that in order to be complete, we need somebody else to believe in us or more money in our bank account. And so we look externally for those things. And when we get them, we still feel incomplete. And then we blame those things for not being good enough. When the reality is, we won't be good enough with it if we're not good enough without it. We have to do the inner work in order to celebrate the success that we're working so hard for.
I could not agree more. I grew up with my mother the same way. Single mother, so I didn't have my dad, very similar to you, mine just wasn't around. Was, black kid with the whole dad went to get milk, never showed up thing. One of those things. But
You have
my
to
mom,
warn me you're going to say that before I take a drink of water.
it was perfectly timed actually.
It was.
On purpose, but with the same thought. and the trauma, like very similar, except for I lost my mom in 2021 to alcoholism, cirrhosis of her liver, which she had alcoholism, battled it forever, which was a huge issue of what we went through. But while she was essentially on her deathbed, I came to the realization that was her journey, right? Shitty as it is, that was her journey. She did try her best. She worked with what she had to work with. And I'm at least here because of what she could do, right? But I still battle, and I've gone through it a lot in the last week, propping myself up, being proud of myself, positively talking to myself, because I've always blamed other things or other issues. And what really triggered that for me is my oldest son is very much like me in regards to that. And we were, what was it, last weekend? We went to his friend's soccer game because we had the Saturday to do, but he didn't play until Sunday. And he asked me, is anyone coming to my game? I'm like, I don't know. I didn't ask him, but it doesn't matter because you're going to your game. This is about you, your happiness, your drive, and it has to be singularly on you. When I said that, I went, I better listen to my own mouth,
Yeah,
right?
it's
What
good
the
advice.
hell am I doing? And so I want everyone to know, like, I'm still working. I'm sure you're still working.
Yes.
Those are things you just have to catch yourself with. Now, things
Yeah.
that make you feel better and bring you joy are going to be different than mine, but you also have to recognize, hey, doing so is a good thing, right? And being able to prop yourself up is a good thing. You don't always have to have an enemy or, someone else to drive you. Just be you and focus on you. So I love that. And I had to tell that story
Yeah.
because I really recognize it with my son. And I was like, geez, come on,
No, I
dad.
love
Get it
this. And
together.
I want to share this about something you just said, because I did a podcast episode on this about a year and a half ago called Humility's Bullshit. And we are always taught as kids to be humble. Have you ever looked up the definition of humility? I just pulled it up so I didn't misquote it, and I want to share it with you. A modest or low view of one's own importance. So we are taught to undervalue ourselves from the time that we're children.
Wow.
Can we avoid being humble without being egotistical? That's where the sweet spot is at. I will never tell somebody to be humble ever again. Because I remember, I don't know what made me decide to look at that. I think I was doing some stuff for a course and I was looking up different definitions and I came across humility and I read it and I was like, I don't want to be that.
No.
I don't want to be that at all. But what are we told? What are we told as kids? Don't talk about money, politics, or religion. If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. Be humble. Don't talk about your successes. Don't make people feel bad. And then we grow up and we be adults and we be adults. Jesus Christ, Amber. We become adults.
Me be adult.
By the way, I am an attorney that teaches linguistics. Can't
Yeah.
you tell? We grow up and we become adults and we wonder why marketing ourselves is difficult and saving money is difficult and telling people how much we can do for them and why they should pick us over somebody else that does something similar is difficult. But what have we been told our whole life?
You're right.
So don't be humble.
Don't be humble.
Be kind. Be a resource for people. Be of service. Don't be humble.
Don't be humble. As we wrap up, today's episode was phenomenal, and I definitely going to have a round 2 of this sometime soon. What is one thing you want to leave everyone with? And it could be the humility part that allows them to take that next step in their journey, whether it's their wealth journey or just their life journey. What is one thing that you want them to take?
I'm going to get really deep for just a minute. And this is actually something I've never shared on a podcast. Is that okay?
Yep, absolutely. Is it okay with you?
So-
That's what matters.
This just actually recently happened. So I'm going to be vague with the details. I was at an event recently where I've been very lucky my entire life to be safe, to be in a safe environment. And I was at an event recently where I should have been safe and I wasn't. And I can now relate to people who have been in fear for their life in a different way. I can now tell people that I know and understand what it feels like to be hiding behind structures while bullets are flying and afraid for your life. And it's something I don't wish on anybody. I've worked with a lot of people that have PTSD, and I thought because I understood it logically that I understood it psychologically and emotionally, and I didn't. Until you're in it, you just don't know. And one of the things that I used to always talk about was this study that was done a few years back about the fact that our brain is meant to protect us. Our brain is meant to keep us safe. And as we have evolved to a safer community, a safer environment, our threats have changed as well. So it's no longer cavemen trying to figure out where to get food and running from saber-toothed tigers. It's business owners running from mediocrity and sales calls. And our brain doesn't understand those threats differently. So that fight or flight response that kicks in when you think about running from physical danger is the same thing that kicks in when you think about running from emotional danger and sales calls. And what I learned going through this experience was the way that I react to trauma, the way that I react to fear. And there is a third one that nobody talks about that shows up in the majority of people's businesses, and that's freeze. Fight, flight, and freeze. So when you're looking at something that you want to do, whether it's in your relationship, whether it's in your business, whether it's in your communication or your money relationship, whatever it is, when you push up against that barrier of your comfort zone where you feel physically and neurologically afraid, pay attention to how you respond to that. Do you kick and fight, which is defensiveness and aggressiveness and displaced frustration and anger? Do you kick in flight, which is avoidance and running? Or do you kick in freeze, which is your procrastination? And be aware that when you get busy, when you're supposed to be doing something that you know is going to benefit your life and business in a way that you've never experienced before, that busyness, while it seems very real, is very possibly your neurological fight, flight, or freeze system kicking in. So that's what I'll leave you with.
That was deep. You're not wrong. You weren't wrong with that. That is deep. But I appreciate you telling us that story. Again, everyone, fight, flight, or freeze, right? We always leave out the freeze part. Figure it out for yourself. That way you can start to move forward. Amber, appreciate your time. Really lovely having you on. We're definitely having you on again. But again, thank you for your time.
It was an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for making it fun and enjoyable. And I absolutely love your mission here.
Was sponsored by Black Mammoth. Any awards, rankings, or recognition by unaffiliated third parties or publications are in no way indicative of the advisor's future performance or any individual client's investment success. No award, ranking, or recognition should be construed as a current or past endorsement of Black Mammoth. Information regarding specific awards, rankings, or recognitions is available on the Black Mammoth website, www.blackmammoth.com. All investment strategies have the potential for profit or loss. Investment strategies such as asset allocation, diversification, or rebalancing do not assure or guarantee better performance and cannot eliminate the risk of investment losses. There are no guarantees that a portfolio employing these or any other strategy will outperform a portfolio that does not engage in such strategies. This broadcast should not be construed by any client or prospective client as a solicitation to affect or attempt to affect transactions and securities or the rendering of personalized investment advice due to various factors, including changing market conditions. The information discussed in this broadcast may no longer be reflective of current positions or recommendations. While information presented is believed to be factual and up-to-date, Black Mammoth do not guarantee its accuracy, and it should not be regarded as a complete analysis of the subjects discussed. The tax and estate planning information discussed is general in nature and is provided for informational purposes only and should not be construed as legal or tax advice. Listeners should consult an attorney or tax professional regarding their specific legal or tax situation. Past performance is not indicative of future results.